Right, this is me just making a little documentary film about what's happened to me in the taxi service. So many months ago I trained as a taxi driver because of the pressure I'm under to get a job and just earn a decent income, which is what my divorce proceedings are all about. So I was recruited by cooks who live in Bozels, who are based in Bozels and are the preferred taxi supplier for the Scottish Borders Council. I got the training from the cops, I got the training from the councillors, and people like Peter Murdoch and Mr Niven at the council have been extremely helpful. All of the police were genial, the training was excellent, and I was inducted into the service. On day one I was asked to take underage children to school in Ednam without disclosure documents, and when I discussed that with my wife, who's an HR expert, she said, "George, you, with your stance as a human rights activist, if you take that job they will have you banged up within no time at all on false charges. You dare not take the job." Okay, that's the wife who's divorcing me because of my stance on morality, on massive financial crimes, and on how things are in job creation and your capacity to keep your job. Now, the Scottish Borders councillors, all of their staff have had their pay frozen for 5 years back to back. I applied for the CEO's job. I did not even get shortlisted. My offer to do the job for somewhere around £40,000, it was way down below what the current boss was earning. Because the Borders Council is in a debt pool like every other government organisation all across our globe. I understand entirely the debt pool and the concepts, and I also understand why I got the sack from the taxi service after I had been inducted into it. The licence cost me, I can't remember, it's somewhere about £80. I got all the cash into my pockets and I got all the little bags and things that you need to deliver the service. I did one paid customer's job in the town of Kelso, and then I was approached to take the school delivery job that was too hot to handle. So at that point I told Mr Cook that I was unprepared to do it. He said, if you're taking jobs on that basis, and remember that that job was between 8:30 and 8:45 on a daily basis for someone who lives off working as a casual labourer on ad hoc contracts, and that would be the only job I could have been possibly tied into on that day. Everywhere else where you attend work from 9 to 5, it would have been impossible for me to find alternative work. So I refused, and when I refused, the boss, Mr Cook, who's a genial friend of mine, or is an acquaintance of mine, and I've talked to him several times since, he said, you know, we can't have people working under their terms for us. So I got the sack on day two. Since then I've given up all aspirations to be a taxi driver. I've told Peter Murdoch at the office, who's made several polite inquiries about me renewing my training. When I was given a conviction for an assault that I wanted to plead guilty to but was not allowed to by Sheriff Drummond based on the circumstantial evidence, at least Sheriff Drummond let me make my stance on human rights, let me make my stance plain on the massive frauds that are occurring in Scotland that are leading to the closure of local law courts and even the asset stripping of local police salaries and pensions, using a woman called Zoe Billingham, who's the spokesperson for Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary. All the Billingham family are involved in laundering projects, and she used to work for the Cabinet Office. Yeah, so right at the top of government, they're asset stripping all of public services, they're freezing the pay of all of the public servants, and the insightful professors who try and lead their local community out of that debt pool are persecuted and are rendered jobless by the local Freemasonic networks that are also involved in the asset stripping of Britain's Bank within the P2 lodges. They run the Metropolitan Police, and Stephen House, the week that he got his knighthood and his pay rise, relaunched the Moira Anderson investigation into a child murder that was 50 years old, and that is a vicious joke at the expense of that youngster, shared by the two Ronnies and the Chipping Norton set. If you look up Moira Anderson and you look up For These Are My Mountains and all the songs they used to sing, they're now vicious jokes by the two Ronnies. Ronnie Barker, the fat bloke, who's now dead, was a full member of the Prime Minister's Chipping Norton set and made jokes at the expense of the war dead, the Colditz victims, all of the things that they laugh at about His Majesty's Inspector at the Prison Service. You remember the Mackay jokes and all of the porridge stories? That's the same Ronnie. He's in the Chipping Norton drinking set with the Prime Minister, with Jeremy Clarkson, with Rebecca Brooks. That's the woman who's just been acquitted of the phone hacking scandal, and that's the woman who gave evidence to the Leveson inquiry. Leveson is related to the Dukes of Sutherland, the Leveson Gower dynasty, who sent the colonists to the colonies. Yeah? So I'm just going to return my taxi licence, and I've been told that if I'm going to do this properly, I need to engage a solicitor so that I don't get locked away. Now, I cannot engage a border solicitor because I've found out about the border's money laundering frauds, the virtual charities, the incomplete websites, the takeover of the Citizens Advice Bureau by corrupted people who are unprepared to give people advice on retaining their own homes in lawsuits like mine, but instead the innocent activist who's working for world peace and world prosperity and understands entirely the billion-dollar frauds out of Lothian Road, which is reported to John Lamont MSP, who's confirmed that he's received those reports, to Paul Wheelhouse in a referendum meeting, and to Councillor Rory Stewart of Jedburgh, who refused to let him ask any more questions about the undermining of Scottish integrity and the asset stripping of every public service, including all of the energy companies that now impose bill hikes of 20% on the same council staff who have their pay frozen for 5 years back to back. That's 20% a year on oil and gas, on electricity and gas, the same product that was traded in the borders by the Southern Electricity Board with the same distribution points on Henderside Estate and all over Kelso, my hometown, since I was 6 years old. It's now shared by what appear to be 6 of the big 6 companies. John Major is a director at Centrica. John Major oversaw the privatisation of that energy sector. What we're seeing now is the delivery of that energy by globalised companies like Iberdrola, where Professor Gallan, a professor at Edinburgh University, thanks to Alex Salmond's embracing gestures, is now head of Iberdrola, earns €9 million a year for selling exactly the same product to Scottish citizens as the public nationalised companies created in the 1960s. The bills go up 20% year on year, and Salmond is pretending that he's an honest man. Like the rest of the world leaders and the rest of the public servants, he is robbing his public servants. He is undermining local jobs in Scotland all the way to the bank, and even his enemy, Donald Trump, has a vicious Ponzi scheme on Scottish renewables. That's wind power running out of registered companies in Scotland, when Donald Trump pretends to be opposing the imposition of wind farms offshore from his beautiful golf courses. Yeah, it is all through society. It is ultimately corrupted, and it's going to be put to an end because of videos like this one, who are shared with the whole of the free world, who get none of this news from Fox News, from Berlusconi's news, from Conrad Black in America, in Canada, who's a member of the House of Lords but never attends now, and also from the Murdochs, who are with Ronnie Barker and Ronnie Balfour Corbett, who's knighted the same year that we exposed the two Ronnies as humorists in genocide, in war crimes, in the prison sector and the justice sector, and at the same time as we've discovered that local solicitors, who I cannot appoint because they have conflicts of interest on money laundering issues that tie